Thank you, Your Honor. Members of the court, what I'd like to talk with the court about today is the hospital district bond package. And if you'll allow me, what I'd like to do is do somewhat of a historical trend just to put our comments into scope. And so last time the hospital district actually had a bond package was in 1985. And that was approximately 30 years ago, 31 years ago. And the amount of that bond package was under $50 million, and it was to construct new facilities. The population of the county at that point was a little over 1 million people, and so it was voter approved. It was a 60-40 split on the vote. And now the hospital district has come forward, as we've talked about in the last year or so, about contemplating a request for another bond package. When you look at 1985 and the fact that we had 1 million people, and then you move forward to 2016, you'll see that we've gained almost another 1 million people as it relates to the population of Tarrant County.
Almost double.
Absolutely, absolutely. When you look at what facilities existed in 1985 at the hospital district, there was the main campus. It was not as large as it is today. And there was one clinic in the county, and that clinic was in Arlington. If you fast forward to 2016, you'll find that we literally doubled our population in those 30 years. But if you look more specifically at how we now deliver health care compared to what was envisioned that we would be delivering health care in 1985, we see that it's significantly changed. First of all, while my slide says 42 off-site clinics, we've grown actually to almost 60 off-site clinics at the hospital district. We've expanded our main campus with new construction on the east side of Main Street. We also have learned through technology and just different issues within the community, not only the community, but within the state and also within the United States, that how we deliver health care has changed dramatically. So the district is talking about, and we've been engaged with the district, as you have, about the potential of another bond package. And when you go into that bond package, I would suggest that we look out another 30 years and to see just how we may change in the next 30 years. For example, according to the U.S. Census Department and COG, it's estimated that we will have a 59% increase in population by 2040, an addition of another 1 million people. We'll see that our community will change just in demographics, that we will have more geriatric-related citizens who will need assistance. And we know that with the change in technology, and that's the most interesting thing about this, is that the delivery of health care, because of change in technology, has just expedited how we begin to look at new ways of providing that health care. Of course, there's other issues that'll change and are changing. The Affordable Care Act is one. Legislation may be another one. And just simply different trends. And so, in working with JPS and staff, we talked about a process about moving the bond package forward. And we are recommending a 4-step process, and that's what I'd like to discuss with you today. We believe that what is needed at this time, and let me say before I get into these 4 steps, the hospital district has done a tremendous amount of work in these areas. And none of that work that has already been accomplished needs to be sidelined. It needs to be incorporated in everything that we do. But first of all, we would suggest that we contract with a consulting firm, a nationally recognized consulting firm, one that brings almost instant validity in the outcome of their recommendations, to vision for us what this county is going to look like in 30 years. Not only what this county looks like, but the health delivery system that we have in Tarrant County, that we have in the state, and also that we have in the nation, to give us some type of insight as to where we're going. Now, I will tell you that on this slide here, we say look at 10 years and 10 years beyond. Since the time we put this presentation together, it's very obvious that you can't simply look at 10 years. You have to look much farther out. And so we need to view how we're going to be doing business over the next 30 years. Critically important, not only with how healthcare, what type of healthcare will be delivered and how it will be delivered, the role of JPS needs to be discussed. What we'll be asking this committee or this consultant to do is to review the previous planning efforts that JPS has done, look at the future needs of medical care here in Tarrant County, and do a medical needs assessment. We expect that in their role as a consultant that they would receive input from JPS officials and executive leadership, from healthcare providers, from partners within JPS, both public and private providers of healthcare, and also the general public. The findings of this consultant should be provided to not only the Commissioners Court and the JPS Board of Managers, but also to a Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee. So let's talk a little bit about the Blue Ribbon Committee, which is step 2. We're recommending that the Commissioners Court create a Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee that will be charged with the responsibility of reviewing information not only from the vendor that is in step 1, but also those that are in step 3 and 4, to hear input from the JPS board, the professionals at JPS, professionals from the public and non-profit groups that provide health services, from the general public. Their goal is to make recommendations to the Commissioners Court and the Board of Managers as far as the need for and the size of a particular bond package. We're recommending that the committee be made up of 11 individuals. None of those individuals should be members of either the Commissioners Court or the Board of Managers. However, we do believe that the Commissioners Court should appoint 2 liaisons to this particular committee, and that the board appoint 2 liaisons. Of those 11 members, we're suggesting that each Commissioners Court member have 2 appointees, and the Commissioners Court as a whole appoints the committee chair. Let's talk a little bit about the makeup of that committee. I think it's going to be very, very important that we choose wisely who we put on that committee. It needs to be individuals that have diverse views, but also have standing in the community. Simply because their recommendations, after thorough analysis of all the information, is going to be a recommendation that they make to this Commissioners Court on how the court should proceed. The third step is the engagement of another consultant, but this consultant would be one who would look at current facilities and equipment. JPS, except for the one new structure that they have on the east side of Main Street, basically their buildings are very old. And the delivery of health care in those type of buildings is very expensive. However, before anyone can make a judgment as to what new buildings are needed, we need to do an evaluation of the existing facilities and equipment and determine what purposes those buildings can serve. If they can serve all of the purposes of JPS or partially the needs of JPS, and also to look at the equipment and the cost of that equipment. And one of the things that a lot of people don't realize, and I know each of you do because we build buildings, is that when we look at the cost and opening of a building, it's not just the cost of the bricks and mortar, it's the equipment that's in those buildings and also the peripherals that go with the construction of a building. If you look at equipment that's used in the medical community, and specifically at JPS, you'll find that that equipment has a much shorter lifespan than equipment that we normally are associated with, and that the price of that equipment is tremendously high. Plus, as I mentioned earlier, the technology is changing at such a rapid speed that in order to provide quality health care to our citizens, new technology or new equipment is going to be essential. We see that already in the hospital as they move forward with retiring some of their older equipment and buying new equipment. The problem is that they're buying new equipment that is not necessary, in some cases, is not as functional as it should be simply because of the facilities as a whole. Once again, this consulting group, we ask that it be a nationally recognized firm so that it lends credibility to its final results. It should also look at the future needs as far as facilities are concerned of JPS. What we're trying to do is to get a broad understanding of not only the future of healthcare, but also the type of facilities and equipment that's going to be necessary to deliver that healthcare. Once again, it'll be presenting reports not only to the Commissioner's Court and to the Board of Managers of the hospital district, but also to the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee. And then finally, step 4 is one where that we can either engage an additional third party or maybe roll this responsibility into one of the other consulting firms that we've engaged, and to combine the information that we see in steps 1 and 3 and make those presentations so we have a written document, a comprehensive plan, if you will, now that can be considered by the Blue Ribbon Committee and also that can eventually be considered by the Commissioner's Court to determine what action we will be taking in the future as it relates to this bond package. One of the things that is important to say here is that this is not a new strategic plan for the hospital district. It should be incorporated into their existing strategic plan, and there eventually will be a modified plan that will not only have the vision aspect of a look over the horizon for 30 years, but also what facilities are necessary to accomplish that. The hospital district has a fairly, I've reviewed their strategic plan, and it's structured on a pillar form, and it's a very good master plan. This would simply, or a strategic plan, this would simply add to that strategic plan. And as the slide depicts, the report would be presented to the Blue Ribbon Committee, also the Board of Managers, and the Commissioner's Court. Let's talk a little bit about transparency. It's going to be absolutely critical that the community as a large understands how we go through this process. In order to accomplish that, we at staff level believe that we need to become as transparent as we are here in Commissioner's Court. Therefore, what we're recommending is that the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee meet whenever it meets in a public space, that there's adequate notice of the meetings, that we encourage the public to attend, and that all meetings digitally are recorded. All the reports that are utilized or developed by the committee should become public documents and be made available in a timely manner. One of the things is we have been working on this process previously when we first thought we might be going to bond election and we chose to delay it at this time, was that we created an interactive website. I think that was one of the smartest things that we did on that process, because an interactive website allows the general public to access the website, ask questions, and the hospital district was able to answer those questions within 24 hours. Those questions were posted, and also the answers were posted back onto the website. So not only the individual who asked the question, but everyone who views the website had access to not only the question, but the answer to the question. This interactive website would also be where the recorded meetings would be stored, so that anyone who would like to view any of the meetings of the Citizens Blue Ribbon Committee, that they would be available on demand through that website. Also, all documents that are produced, we said previously that those would be public documents, that they would be posted on that website, and also that we would strongly encourage the public to make comments on that process and the findings of the committee. And that serves a real purpose, because if we're going to ask the voters to move forward and approve any type of bond package, we need to ensure that the voters are well informed as to why there is a need for the services, why there's a need for the facilities, and why there's a need for additional equipment. One of the things that we've also talked about as it relates to this, by having an open forum and opening it up to individuals who want to address the committee itself, to board members that want to address the committee, to court members that might want to address the committee, that it'll be in such a fashion that those individuals will have an opportunity to voice their opinions, and though their opinions may be accepted or they may not be accepted, but the key is the fact that they are allowed to voice their opinions. And input, being part of ownership process in this bond package, and the determination as to what our citizens need and JPS needs to serve those citizens is a highly desirable outcome. So I know that one of the questions that the court may have is, how do we fund this? Since we're asking the Commissioners Court to take the leadership role as we move forward, continue to move forward with this bond package proposal, we're going to recommend, staff recommends that the Commissioners Court initially fund the services. We've requested the Budget Director to look for revenues in an amount of approximately $1 million to assist, and that $1 million may not be something we expended this year, it may be over a 2-year period. We really don't know exactly how much the cost will be. But let me put this into perspective. Back in 2004, the Dallas County Commissioners Court engaged in the same process we're talking about here. Pretty much the same steps. They spent approximately $1.4 million in 2004. I personally don't believe that we're going to need to spend all that type of money, and I'll tell you why. JPS has done a tremendous amount of work in this already, and a lot of the research may have already been completed. It needs to be updated, and it needs to be tested to see if it still is valid. And I personally don't think that, I think that $1 million is a much closer number. It may be much less. But I'd rather give you a number that you can digest and understand that we will try not to exceed that amount. So, talk about timeline. I know that everybody wants to speed this process up, and I fully understand that. Please understand that in order to be successful in determination of what our needs need to be, or are, that the process should really dictate the timeline. However, this is not something that we slow down or we take a casual approach. If the court gives us the opportunity to move forward after today, we will start the process. In fact, we already have started the process in developing the RFP. We've already contacted purchasing, and purchasing is aware of what the potential is here and assures us that they can assign an assistant purchasing agent to assist us in this process. If the court gives us the ability to move forward today, we would hope to have that RFP ready for step one to be ready to hit the street by mid to late April. It's a fairly complex RFP. As I said, we've been working on a tentative statement of work for about the last 2 weeks, and we're fully engaging the hospital district now in helping us formulate that. So let's talk a little bit about the role of the hospital district and also the Commissioners Court. It's my firm belief that the Commissioners Court has to provide leadership. It's the only way that we can ensure that the process is going to be one that is satisfactory not only to this court but the community at large. However, we have to team, and we should be teaming with our Board of Managers. And in such, we have to make sure that they are our partners in this process. When it comes to the leadership aspect of this, the non-elected and non-appointed leadership aspect. Our office will take the lead. However, the executive director and the executive group at Peter Smith will be co-partners with us. And let there be no doubt, they're the ones that have the expertise on healthcare. And we understand process. And in our discussions with Mr. Early and his team, we feel very comfortable working together that we can deliver a product that will be satisfactory to this Commissioner's Court. In conclusion, let me say this, just a reminder. In the last 30 years, we've grown by 1 million people. In the next 30 years, we're going to grow by another 1 million people. Our bond package in 1985 was less than $50 million, and it really didn't foresee clinics. We now have 62 clinics. Things are changing, and they change fairly rapidly in the provision of health care. We need to evaluate our current and future needs. We need to incorporate those visions inside the master plan. We need to have a financial plan. Let's talk just a second about financial plan. As part of this process, we need to look not only at one way of funding this particular project, but contingencies, so that if one element of the funding strategy does not work, that there's a fallback position. We still gauge this as something that we would not ask the Commissioner's Court for any increase in the tax rate. You will have proven time in my 28 years with this court doing bond packages, you all have proven that you manage the county's money wisely. Tax rates are set by you for the hospital district. If you continue, as you've done in the last 28 years, then we'll manage this without a tax rate increase. And then finally, the issue of leadership, and I keep coming back to that, it's critically important that this Commissioner's Court play the role as the driver of leadership in this process. So with that, Your Honor, that's my presentation. I ask that you give me comments, and hopefully at the end of your discussions today, that you can give me direction to move forward.
Questions, comments?
I have a comment, if I may, several comments, actually. May I?
Sure.
Thank you. This court is already 1 year into discussion of whether and when to call a bond issue to improve the medical services to our community. I understand process. I understand that there is a need for a credible process to reach conclusions that will answer those two questions, whether and when. But I also understand the nature of process. Process can be used to educate, to elucidate, and to build consensus, or it can be used to block, to obfuscate, and to derail. If we adopt this process, it will be my determination to make sure that the process is used to move us forward and not to destroy. Our JPS Health Network is a very valuable institution in this community, and it serves a very valuable purpose as the safety net hospital for this community. And Judge, I'm going to ask you to pull out that Star Telegram that you have right there and turn to the article about the stroke program at JPS hospitals in this morning's Star Telegram.
Well,
our safety net hospital is a safety net not only for providing indigent health care in our community, providing services for those who cannot afford it, but it's also a safety net for those who are victims of trauma, for those who have a stroke, for those who have cancer. It is the safety net for all of this community, not just for the poor. Any of us can find ourselves in need of the services of John Peter Smith Hospital. In fact, if you have a trauma issue, you better hope they take you to John Peter Smith Hospital. So let's get on with this. Let's make sure that we do our due diligence, that we do it in a way that is transparent and that the community can understand. And let's get on with our responsibilities to provide a better system of care for the residents of Tarrant County. The longer we wait, the more the capital costs increase, the bricks and mortar costs, the equipment costs, and the more the opportunity costs increase. The savings that we would get through inefficiency, through providing efficiencies, and through the loss of functionality due to old and outdated buildings, building designs, and equipment. Those continue to rise the more we delay. So let's get on with this and quit dithering about it.
GK, I have a question.
Yes, sir.
You mentioned that this court will lead the process.
That's correct.
And so that means you will be the key administrator of this process. You will make sure that this process is followed in a constructive way.
That's correct. Yes, sir.
Okay, so that means you will also help administer the Blue Ribbon Committee,
We'll
and
provide,
you will also help administer and manage the consultant?
it'll all come through our office.
Okay.
Yes, sir. And the reason I say that is because, as we all know, whatever comes through my office is going to come directly to this court also, so you'll be fully aware of this process. It's critically important. One of the things that we're recommending is that every other month initially, that we come before you and brief you on the status of this so that you know where we're at, and so we can ensure, Commissioner Brooks, that we aren't slowing things down, because our goal is to move this forward also.
But yes, I think with your recommendation that we take the leadership role in that. And certainly I understand that we'll hire the RP, hire the consultants, they will communicate with us. Ultimately, they'll answer to us, but they will also work extremely closely with JPS.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, Your Honor,
Yeah, they have to.
I might not have been clear. Let me take one step back and come at you this way. When I say our office, the leadership piece on this at staff level is joint leadership. Our office and also Mr. Early's office and the staff at JPS. No, this is not going to be something that will be managed solely, but we'll simply be running point on that process. We've had fairly thorough discussions with Mr. Early on that aspect. He feels very comfortable with it. I believe the board is comfortable with it. And so I've spoken incorrectly or not clear enough in that this is just our office, but we're going to run point, but we're a partnership down with JPS on this. It has to be. It has to be.
Anything else, Commissioner Wynn?
Well, I just want to say that the end product of this process should be a good one if we adhere to the spirit of the process. This is a long-term investment, as you stated, and I think this court agrees with you, and JPS Board of Managers agree with you. This is a 30-year investment that we are talking about. As a result, we need to make sure that we fully understand the needs of the communities that we are supposed to be serving in the next 30 years. The various demographics, the various changes in the healthcare landscape. We need to take that into consideration. And as a result, if we be thorough about the process, then we'll have a higher probability of getting things right, not only for today, but for the future as well. So I myself, as a direct recipient of healthcare benefits from these sort of programs as a refugee, okay, I understand the importance of the JPS facilities. My family received benefits from hospitals and programs like JPS. And we receive it in a way that empower us to be who we are today as contributing American. So Commissioner Brooks, I understand your concern, but I want to reassure you that I will work with you and other court members and the team to assure that whatever the end product will be, it will be one that benefits the county, not only for today, but also for the next 30 years.
Thank you.
Commissioner Figgis?
Yeah, I see this as very similar to the infrastructure that we all have worked on in the last 10 years. You know, building highways. This is nothing more than building a healthcare infrastructure. We know the people are going to come. That we've seen it firsthand, how this county has grown. And if you think that we're only gonna be at 3 million, at that point, I think we'll probably be surprised that we'll exceed that, and we've got to put in place the infrastructure to handle our healthcare needs. We've all been involved in these processes in different arenas, and I see this as, the only real difference is that we got people's lives that are depending on this. Okay, if you decide not to take that highway, you probably doesn't have anything to do with your life, but you've got, when you're dealing in healthcare, I mean, we're talking about saving lives and providing a quality of care throughout Tarrant County. And it's not just those that need it the most, that, as Roy, Commissioner Brooks said, if you need a level 1 trauma center and you're in the condition that requires that, you better hope you go to JPS. So,
Commissioner Figgis, you brought up a very good point by comparing this process to a transportation project. Okay, those of us who are heavily involved in transportation, we understand the key to success is partnership. Okay, it's not just building a road or a highway. It's about various entities, private and public, working together to assess the needs and to help fund the project, right? Okay, so we don't always have to build the project and fund the project ourselves. We can form partnerships that leverages the existing resources out there in the community to make sure that healthcare delivery is taken care of for the indigent population. So partnership is an important component of this process. And hopefully during the process, we'll be able to identify some of the potential partnerships that will help sustain the work that we do for our constituents in the long run.
Your Honor, I'm going to ask that the court give me a order to move forward.
Well, I want to see if Commissioner Johnson has anything to say before we go
Well, I
forward.
just want to say that I've gone through this. Roy and I sat through meetings yesterday, concurring everything that's been said. I also am one that used the JPS system. I have 2 insurances. I don't have to. I use it by choice because I think that is the best service that you can get in this county. It's an excellent service. All of our doctors, I would even go to bet that the doctors that you use are trained or associated in some way with JPS. It's a training facility. for our doctors. It's something that we've got to do. We don't have a choice. We've got to move forward one way or the other on this because we're getting behind and the weeds are growing. So we need to get it done. And with that, I would move that we proceed with the procedure that has been outlined.
Second.
We have a motion to second. I guess I want to add at least that I think the process we went through the past summer with the town hall meetings accomplished some very good things. One, we did focus and hear the public say that they would like for us to focus more attention at least, or some attention at least, on the clinics that we serve. And as you mentioned, we went from 1 to 60-something. We also, midway through that process, were made aware of a med school partnership between, or collaboration, I don't think we're supposed to call it a partnership, a collaboration with TCU and UNT Health Science Center. And then I think the other thing that we will accomplish by this process is a definition of who are we responsible for serving. Commissioner Johnson just indicated he goes there because he feels like that is the best place in this county to receive service. You mentioned that we're responsible for the indigent. And that percentage of indigent in these last 30 years has grown to, if you look at the poverty level in our schools and you look at the free, the free lunch programs and the free meal programs that we're putting on there, it has gone from somewhere in the neighborhood of, in Fort Worth, I believe, somewhere in the neighborhood of from 20% to now well over 50 or 60%, maybe even as high as 70. And that's a statistic that even within HEB, from the time that I served on that board in '93 until now, we've seen a tremendous growth in the families there who are under the poverty level. And so I think that as we look at this, we've got to understand that not only are our demographics growing, but the percentage of indigent is also growing in percentages from that standpoint. So I agree with the outline that you have proposed. I think, as an example, the presentation that you gave to us regarding the bond package proposal, it's on the website now.
Yes, it is.
So folks can go and they can immediately see that, and they can immediately see this discussion that we had here today. So I think that it is important that folks have an opportunity to see that and to understand the process as we go forward. But it is important that we move to make a decision, just as this summer we moved to get to the town hall meetings, and that was the push at that point in time, was to get us to the town hall meetings to see what input we got from the public. We got that. We're now at this point. I hope that we can get the RFPs out, and if what we're saying is we're approving this process, then that may very well be that we're approving 3 RFPs. And I don't know if that's a decision that's encompassed in this motion, or if we're going to wait and have the recommendation of the Blue Ribbon Committee or of this group. We know that we need the RFP out very quickly for where is healthcare going in the next 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And we know we need the one to evaluate our current facilities and where they are. The third one is one that we may want to take a little bit of time on, but I would hope that by the middle to the end of April, no later than the end of April, and hopefully by the middle, that we have RFPs out for the first 2 groups. And that, there's the article. We know we're a level 1 trauma. We know we have a responsibility, and I think we need to move forward as quickly as we can in the process to get us to that end stage.
Your Honor, let me just very quickly address one of your comments. Step 1, Step 2, Step 3, and Step 4 are not steps that are where you have to do 1 before you move to 2, before you move to 3, 4. A lot of that will be running concurrently. What we're asking today is to move forward on the process as we move into those, all of these RFPs, we'll be bringing those back to you to talk about. And I understand, you know, we try to make it as simplistic and as possible with the different vendors, the different RFPs. But if there's a possibility that we can roll 3 into one of the others, or if we can, I'm sorry, 4, the third RFP into one of the others, or if that work is supposed to, could be done by some other situation, then we'll obviously bring that to the Commissioners Court. This is, all we're asking for today is that this Commissioners Court says yes to this process, and that staff should move forward with it.
That's the motion.
Of course, we reserve the right to tweak the process at any point it needs to be tweaked. Call the question.
There being no further discussion, please vote. Motion passes unanimously. One question I guess that I would like to ask at this point in time is, what would you like for this court to consider its timeline for coming up with the 2 appointments
So,
with each of our
when
committees?
looking at the timeline itself, we believe that the first RFP is going to take probably 4 to 6 months. And rather than simply appointing a blue ribbon committee now and really not having anything for them to do initially, that what we would like is for that blue ribbon committee to be in place within about 2 months prior to the delivery of that first RFP. Okay? That way we can walk through the process with the blue ribbon committee. They need to fully understand what their charge is, and we'll be bringing that charge back to you to make sure that you agree with that charge. And so they are well positioned and ready to go to do that for the analysis of the first RFP. Hopefully that second RFP, in my mind, should not take as long as the first RFP. And hopefully they will get to the point where they can give their findings to the Blue Ribbon Committee pretty much at the same time. So, Your Honor, that's a long way of going back to your question, but I would think that, I would encourage the
August,
court
September.
to start thinking about that and us have more conversations, or identify the people who you think might be good members of that committee. And then I would hope that by July, somewhere in there, that we begin to coalesce and appoint that committee.
Can you come up with a process for this court to look at when we appoint the chairman of the committee, of the Blue Ribbon Committee? How does that work?
Once again, I think that the person who chairs this committee has to be easily identifiable in the community, needs to be a leader in the community. I think we can, I could say we could propose names to you, but quite frankly, this is your appointee. If you want me to propose some people, I'd be more than happy to do that. But I believe that you need to look at who you think are leaders in this community also.
I
We'll
think this court
identify.
is capable of coming up with names.
Thank you, Commissioner. But, but
We
the
don't need
process
to hire a
itself,
consultant for that.
No,
and you surely don't need the administrator to do that either,
no.
So, what else you got?
We voted, didn't we?
We did.
Okay,
Okay, is that it?
Sit down.
that's all we have at this time, Your Honor.